like a shepherd. When I use the word like, what is it? Simile. If I say a teacher is a shepherd, I move from like to is, and therefore I'm calling it a metaphor. Notice, all metaphors are in principle lies. A teacher isn't. A teacher isn't a shepherd. And a shepherd is not a teacher. Have you ever seen a shepherd give a test of a sheep? Never. Right. So all metaphors are interesting devices, but they're all literally false, aren't they? But
Man is a machine.
pardon me?
Man is a machine.
Is a
Machine.
metaphor. Because man is not a machine. Right. Okay. So what's interesting then about the analogy, just to go back over it, right? Whatever is the key way in which shepherds ideally relate to sheep, that way of relating, we're now saying, you can then transfer over to the second set of terms and say that same way of relating we can expect will be taking place between a teacher and his students. What's the key word? Ideally. Analogy is in the realm of the ideal. Because obviously there may be some teachers who relate to their students not like a shepherd to his sheep, but like
preacher and his congregation.
Good, or give me an idea of the worst teacher you ever had. What would you call the person? He or she. The worst teacher was like a what? A tyrant, right? So you could say a shepherd is to his sheep as a teacher is to his students. But wait a minute, if you're thinking about the way in which some teachers are to students, as a tyrant may be to his subjects, now you have a different kind of analogy, don't you? Ideally.
Right. Or master is to slave.
Or master is to slaves. Good. Right?
So
Now, what that means then is any time you have a simile or a metaphor, you can unpack it, take it apart, and explore it. And you can unpack it going backwards and recreate the analogy from which it was taken. All right, let's take the one we just used. A dictator, a tyrant, right? A tyrant is a shepherd. It's a very poor analogy. It's not ideal, but what would that mean? We can say in some respects there must be some relation which is going on between the two, which I can transfer to my second set of terms. And when I do that, I am then unpacking it, bringing it back to the original analogy. Now there are four possible similes and four possible metaphors of any analogy. Let's do them, all right? First, all right, I can use A, B, C, D. Now look what I'm doing. I can take A is to C, a shepherd, right? A shepherd is a teacher. I can say a teacher is a shepherd. So therefore I can go in two directions, can't I? I can go in two directions. I can go this way and I can go back again, can't I? Would you equally agree? I can say sheep are like students. Or how about this? Sheep are students. Students are sheep. So therefore, would you not agree? I have generated four sets, two metaphors, two similes. Pardon me. Four metaphors. Let's turn them into similes. We take these words out. What do we use in its place? The word like. A shepherd is like a teacher is like a shepherd. Sheep are like students, students are like sheep. So therefore, anytime we have an analogy, we can always break it down into four possible metaphors, four possible similes. Why is that important? Because dreams deal with metaphors and similes in an analogical structure, which when expanded becomes an allegory. That's where we're going next. All right? Any questions about anything we're doing? Please holler. Just to go back over, this is an analogy of 4 terms. A shepherd is to his sheep as a teacher is to his students. Or we can say, can we not? A shepherd is to his sheep as a captain is to his crew. Couldn't we? And we can do the same thing. A shepherd is like a captain is like a shepherd. Sheep are like the crew members as crew members sometimes are like sheep, can't we? And we can generate, therefore, another set of 4 metaphors, 4 similes, can't we? This is very puzzling. All right, now, when you have a 4 terminology, you must learn how to expand the number of terms to generate an allegory. That's where we're going. What's our goal? To expand the analogy by adding terms to the first set and finding parallel terms in the second set. Now, I didn't put that down. I'll put it now. What are we going to do? We're going to expand the analogy by adding terms to the first ratio and finding parallel terms for the second ratio. Now, we'll do it together. Before we do it, I want to see whether I can just add one more element of distinction for you, which I think you may be seeing. Whenever you generate metaphors and similes from an analogy, you always have what are called strong and weak metaphors and similes. Strong and weak. And you'll see something curious about the way you can understand that in a moment. But first, let's go back to this. A shepherd is a teacher. Which to you, in terms of your own experience, seems more accurate? A shepherd is a teacher or a teacher is a shepherd?
Teacher is a shepherd.
Teacher, right, is a shepherd. That's the strong one. And it's only in some way that you can talk about a shepherd as a teacher. Would you agree with that? And therefore that's the weaker. You always have a strong and a weak metaphor. Too strong, too weak. Take this one. Would you agree? Sheep are students or students are sheep. Which is stronger?
Students are sheep.
That's right. And the weaker? Now what do you notice about that, putting that back in here? Can you tell me? Just notice it. It's just taking a look.
Stronger.
Which one is the stronger? Which way does it go? Take the terms. Call this the first term, second term, third term, fourth term. You see, would you agree? We can have the first term is to the third term, or we can have the third term is to the first term. Agree? And we can put in here is or like, can't we? Which one is stronger? The one that goes to 1 to 3 or 3 to 1? 3 to 1. It's always the, what we call the inverse. It's always the inverse. Going backwards is always the stronger. Always. If you set up your terms properly, it's always the stronger. All right, let's change it now from a metaphor, please, to a simile. All right, what are we going to do? Substitute for is. And in here, what are we going to use?